Hello and welcome to TARDIS Rubbish. I'm Josh, and today we're talking The Legend of Ruby Sunday, the penultimate episode of Season 14 of Doctor Who. Sorry, Michael, I can't call it Season 1. It just doesn't make any sense. It's too confusing for me. And joining us today at the console, he is a frequent contributor to the Secret Origins of Mint Condition podcast, Trash Compactor, a mostly Star Wars podcast, and perhaps creator of a mystery project he's working on. We don't know. Welcome, John.
Even I don't know. I probably do. Glad to be back. Excited, and I love the proper use of penultimate. One of my favorite words.
Oh, thank you, thank you. He is the former engineer of the Game of Rassilon Doctor Who RPG podcast and player in the upcoming Good Chaotic RPG podcast. Welcome back, Michael A. Nixon.
Hello, I'm back. Josh is the only person who still puts an A as my middle initial, and I love it. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. I like that A. I'd be sad to lose it.
Hey, I'm not complaining.
And she is a frequent fixture on the Secret Origins of Mint Condition podcast and an expert in all things sound. Welcome back, Adrienne.
Hello.
Okay, so The Legend of Ruby Sunday, as John pointed out, the penultimate episode of this season. So we're into the finale. We're into the big stuff. We're starting to get some answers. This is definitely a Russell T Davies, fireworks in the kitchen sink finale. And I'm here for it. But let's get our overall thoughts. Michael, you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. I feel like I saw a lot of complaints, quote unquote, in the discourse, as they say, about how this really felt a lot like part one of a season finale. And I guess my only response to that is, yeah, yes, you're right. Well done. I thought it was fantastic. Davies he absolutely played me like a fiddle until the reveal, even down to just like hiding the reveal in a gag earlier. I feel like in earlier appearances I didn't give Russell Davies nearly enough credit for being absolutely the top of his game. Sure, he's doing all the Russell stuff, but that's the stuff we love. I love it. Yeah, I had a great time. I feel like it's just like the T in Russell T Davies is it troll? Is he just trolling us? Because there's so much efficient mess, with the regeneration talk and the Susan talk and the amount of stuff that gets dropped even before they go into the time window. I have no idea what's inside that window by that point. It's such a clever bombardment of information and just sort of a larger thing about the whole episode. You're not supposed to know what to expect until the reveal, and even after the reveal, it's like, wait, what? Which is terrific. That's good TV.
Good TV, I think, is exactly hitting the nail on the head, which I want to talk about a little bit more. But Adrienne, your overall thoughts?
It was creepy. No, it was good. I very much enjoyed it, but I was very creeped out by the end. I've never been like a horror person, so I was like, oh no, as it was going on. But it was really good. Yeah, I knew going in that it was gonna be a part one. Did not know. I mean, I guess the villain is somebody from old Who, but I haven't seen that, so I wasn't aware of that. But I kind of guessed that it wasn't Susan just because they were trying to point that way, but I was trying to figure out who else was maybe Susan instead. But we didn't, if she is, we didn't find that out. But yeah, I really enjoyed the episode, even if it was creepy.
Yeah, I want to come back to a few of the things that you just said, but John, your overall thoughts, and I do want to ask you and Adrienne more specifically about the reveal, because I know neither of you, I don't think, have seen the Pyramids of Mars, the Tom Baker story.
No, I looked it up afterwards because I had, I just had a sense of was this something pre-established? I need to know more. So, was instantly on Wikipedia with that. Yeah, so I really, I was there, I was texting you, and you were like, no spoilers, no spoilers. And I was sitting there just in the first 2 minutes. I was like, I need to talk about all of just 2 minutes so far, because it was just a fun, I thought it was really cool assembling at unit. From the dramatic entrance of the TARDIS, which I think that's the theme for this season, is that this Doctor loves the flair and drama in his appearances, and I love that. There's no attempt to tone that down or be like, oh no, he's just sort of like, yeah, he's a doctor, it's fine. It's like, no, he's on full display. And it was just cool to see everybody sort of there, and it wasn't the typical like unit is falling apart and is a disaster, and the doctor has to save everything. This was unit at the top of its game, and the doctor's like, I need help. I'm not sure what's going on, but this is weirding me out. I saw this anagram, and I think this person is really important, Susan Twist, and then it comes in like, oh, granddaughter, that whole thing. That was such a hard fake that I was not expecting it to be a hard fake. Like you, yes, it was obvious, but I was really expecting there to be a thing with that, because that's something that I was also, speaking of who Doctor Who passed, is that I really started in 2005 when you mentioned it to me. I think I'd seen it somewhere else. There was an episode or two right towards the very beginning of the reboot, um, and then by episode 3 we had synced up and we were both watching it, in real time, and I was obsessed. So all of that history isn't really there for me in the same way. So I was really looking forward to more of this granddaughter doctor relationship. I was literally, during the episode, researching like, wait, how did that work? Because he made the reference to like, oh well, I haven't had kids yet. Wait, so that means the doctor has kids but can have grandkids out of order. Oh man, that's just like the therapy. Everything can be out of order. And I was loving that. And then for it to be a complete fake out is just, oh, okay, what's even more messed up than this? So it was a ride from the beginning to the end for me. But yeah, this is an episode where I wish I've been watching it live with somebody. I think to anybody who hasn't, well, if you're watching this, I hope you have watched it because of spoilers. But maybe for the next and final episode of the season, watch it with somebody. I think this is something best shared if possible, because I wanted to look over, and be like, wait, did you just see what I saw? For most of the episode, and that's before even getting into the heavy details. But I was like freaked out by the end, and I had no idea that was that. Well, it's uh, Sutekh, but isn't that Set? Isn't that the Egyptian god Set,
Yes.
or supposed to be an incarnation of the version of that? So yeah, I didn't know that was part of the story and mythology of Doctor Who. So that's gonna be something real interesting. And you know what? The special effects were really cheesy in a way for that, but also perfectly on brand. And I have to like dial back and remember that. Sometimes it's hard to remember that this is Doctor Who. It's not always supposed to be the like most grounded, like hard boiled science fiction with the most realistic effect. It's meant to be sometimes scary silly. Actually, all the time scary silly. So sometimes I have to like reprocess that when I see their choices for special effects. And in this one, I was like, okay, all right, what are they going to do with this? And Adrienne, yeah, I'm there with you. Like at the end, I was not expecting the zombie disintegration sand effects there, and scare things like, oh great, now we got undead to deal with. This is something the Doctor hasn't, seen in a while, which I think is part of the storyline. And that's what I'm going to ask the rest of you now: is what. So if this is another past Doctor Who, adversary and threat to all of creation, is this linked to the toy maker or what happened at the edge of the universe? Is this why he's back?
Well, that's an interesting point if it has to do with what the 14th Doctor did with the salt at the edge of the universe. That was really a bad idea, a bad mistake that he made.
A terrible move. Truly a
Terrible.
bad
Yeah,
move.
yeah.
And he knew it right as he did it. He was just like, oh, I really shouldn't have done that. Like, and I had no. I was like, what are you talking about? This is just a one-off, episode. I had no idea it was going to be that substantial.
Well, what is interesting to me is that so first of all, I think because Russell said in some interview, I don't know if it was in Doctor Who magazine or if it was in. He said it in some interview. He was like, "There's an episode this season that I've had this idea for 40 years or for 50 years," and so now I'm like, okay, he had a sequel to Pyramids of Mars in mind, and knowing that makes me think he started with this idea. He knew that at the end of the season, the Doctor was going to confront Sutekh. And then it seems to me he reverse engineered the season from that. And I think that's where this idea of establishing these gods came from, because this reveal reminded me in a lot of superficial ways of the reveal of the Master in season 3 in Utopia. Except there, even if you'd only ever seen the new series, the reveal of the Master still had weight because they had spent 3 seasons building up this idea that the Doctor was the last of the Time Lords. So it didn't matter who the other Time Lord was. You felt the weight of the fact that the Doctor's realizing he's not alone anymore. Here, though, the name Sutekh, it's a reference to a 50-year-old story that the vast majority of the audience hasn't seen. So there's not really any weight there. But what he did was he built a scaffolding up from the giggle, bringing the toy maker in and setting this whole thing into motion about how, now the old gods are returning. And he built it up by talking about the one who waits. And you're like, okay, who is this? It must be the head god of all of these gods. So he tried to build up the importance, the significance. So I think that's where we get this new direction that he was talking about for this season, about how we're invoking more fantasy elements and more mythic gods and stuff like that. I think it all stems from his desire to bring back Sutekh, which is the nerdiest, most insane. I don't know. I just think it's really funny because I think, he just wanted to bring Sutekh back from the periods of Mars, and then that was the rationale behind a lot of the decisions that he ended up making during the season. But right after I finished the episode, I was like, if you hadn't seen the classic show, would that have just fallen completely flat?
I definitely think it was, since I had no familiarity with it. It didn't fall flat, but I don't think it had much of an impact beyond, oh, it's another big bad. And that's what I took from it. I'm like, okay, well, this is a big bad, and between the drama of, well, what he's already doing and what his heralds are doing, and what Susan Twist is doing, and that's my next big question: is what in the world is Susan Twist? I don't think the answer is just another herald of Sutekh. That doesn't, that, at least for us, it doesn't make any dramatic sense. So I think there's going to be another reveal in the next episode as to what her deal is, and either why she's one of the one of the chief motivations. But if this Sutekh is just out there, and again, I didn't go into detail about what he was in the past in that in classic Who. Why does he need another right hand? And is it just another right hand? So I really want to find out what that is, because I think the Doctor was already connecting with that person, and was like, okay, what are these dreams you're having? What is this? So I think there are some cool surprises awaiting us in the end. But yeah, I just see it as like another villain. The Master, I already knew the Master, though I will admit, for me, uh, yes, the Master being played by, oh, how did the name just vanish from me? The Professor, famous
Uh,
actor.
Sir Derek Jacobi?
Oh, yes, yes, thank you. Um, was brilliant, and I was so sad that he was turning into a bad guy. I was like, no, I want more of this nice old man. So he turned out to be the Master. But then, when he didn't regenerate into the only Master I was familiar with, Eric Roberts in the 1990s, I was like, well, who in the world is this? I actually think had Eric Roberts made that appearance, kind of would have been hilarious. I think there's a lot of camp that you can really go in with, or that maybe he should make an appearance as the Master someday. Uh, but that was my. I already had some. I knew from the '90s specials and the general Doctor Who, like, oh, the Master is the ultimate nemesis of the Doctor, as a Time Lord. So when there was that reveal, it had impact. Sutekh to me is just sort of like, oh, another big bad. I'm waiting to see how that plays out. But I'm definitely hoping that it does play into like a larger pantheon, and that maybe they refer to Susan Twist as like the mother. Was sort of what I picked up from that, is that maybe she's one of the other gods or something else in the pantheon, and I don't know. I trust him to wrap all of this up, but this was as Mike said, it's classic Russell Davies, but it was also the explosion of all the different things. It was, he who waits. It was the granddaughter, the not granddaughter, having the whole unit cast involved. This was the whole kitchen sink and more. And I was there for it. They brought the mother in. I noted that too. And I thought I love that cute move that they often make in this show, which is to bring in the family members, and put them also at the center of drama, not just keep them at arm's length, worrying about their kids or their family members. It's no, you might end up being partial to the hero. That's why Wilf was so amazing to me. But it's saying no, this is sort of an all humanity affair, and it weirdly connects families together through the shared, saving the world. And I think that would bring most families together.
Yeah, but that is interesting. That is something that Russell Davies has done with all of his companions. Michael, as you mentioned a few episodes ago, that's the DNA from the soap tradition that he injected into Doctor Who. The other brilliant thing that Russell Davies brought to Doctor Who, which I think we forget, is the way that he grounded it in this kind of domestic kitchen sink realism that helped the show have the broad appeal that it used to have, because it wasn't just cult sci-fi. It's grounded in the domestic drama. Yeah, while you were talking, I had like 43 thoughts. I can't remember. The Mrs. Flood, who broke the fourth wall again, and she said he waits no longer or whatever, but we still don't know who or what Mrs. Flood is.
Except she's mean.
Well, yeah, she's mean.
She's mean. You don't give an old lady her tea. That's just not. I mean, I know my sensibilities. That was mean.
Yeah, that was very mean. It seems
Not
like
everybody
Mrs.
gets what they want.
Yeah. It seems like we're not going to get... I have a feeling we're not going to find out who Mrs. Flood actually is, or what her true nature is next week. Susan Triad, I think we are probably going to get a little more information on, because it seemed like Sutekh has some control over the TARDIS. So I think whatever Susan Triad's role was in this story, I think it had something to do with allowing him to have access to control the TARDIS somehow through whatever the software is. Because they never elaborated on, or they never got into what exactly is this software that, is called Triad, and they went out of their way to point out at the very beginning that S-Triad is an anagram for TARDIS, which I also really loved. Like, Russell Davies is so aware of how people watch TV in general, but how Doctor Who fans watch Doctor Who, and he knew the anagram was obvious, and that's why he put it there, because he knew the fans were going to figure out that it was an anagram for TARDIS immediately, and they would start expecting that. And just in the first, 3 minutes, he had the characters be like, yeah, it's an anagram for TARDIS, obviously. And I just thought that was, a very, clever wink and a nod to the sort of participation that the audience brings to the show. Yeah, the other thing about Susan, which also, again, was something of a misdirect, but you can't bring up Susan like that and not do something with it. So I don't know if we are going to see Susan next week, or if she'll return in some fashion maybe later on. But I just don't think you can reintroduce the concept of Susan, show the Doctor sort of getting emotional about it, and then not follow up on that, it seems to me.
The thing, I feel like there's been a lot of negativity around how, Carol Ann Ford just didn't walk out of Unit HQ this week. Just the door next to the Vlinks opens, and Carol Ann Ford in the Susan outfit from An Unearthly Child strolls out. This has been the only way people were happy. But I do think it's really notable how even without literally having Carol Ann Ford play Susan again, we got not only the answer to why the Doctor never went back, we also get a new mystery with Susan, which is even the Doctor doesn't know his own kid. He hasn't met the intermediate step to Susan, which is, for John and Adrienne, that's new information after 60 plus years of Doctor Who. William Hartnell the original Doctor Who was with Susan, the granddaughter, and it was like a problem for the show, so they booted her out of the show in this one serial and just like moved on because it was a complication that if you can never explain who Doctor Who is, like how can you explain who his slightly psychic granddaughter who maybe invented the TARDIS, she claims is like, they're just like, you know what? Never mind. And he picked up a totally different girl from space in The Rescue. It's fantastic. I love The Rescue. It's genuinely my favorite Hartnell serial, just because it's genuinely uncomplicated, and I think the twist is amazing. But yeah, so Susan for forever had been like this weird unsolved thing, and for Davies to come in and not only make it this like wonderfully emotional moment for Kate and the Doctor, and there's so much to praise in this episode. Don't get me wrong, but like Gemma Redgrave, every time she comes back as Kate, she's just doing incredible stuff every time, and she's asked to do such completely different things every time Kate reappears, and just the moments of like silent acting she and Ncuti Gatwa get to have across the whole episode, like in those, even with those moments with Susan, down to the time window, down to one of my favorite silent exchanges I've seen on TV in a long time, which is the one after Colonel Doomed guy walks into the cloud and gets obviously vaporized, and the Doctor and Kate have this look of like Kate, like Gemma and Ncuti effectively communicate in that scene like, I'm sorry, I know I did the wrong thing, and then Kate is also like, you get from Kate like, yeah, I would have done that too. Like there was no way around this other than feeding that guy to whatever was behind the TARDIS. And you get the whole complex array of emotions across the two of them without them having to do like the bad dialogue version, you know? So I thought that was like very cool. I'm like lost in the Susan point. But there was a lot in this episode sort of on that line of like sort of giving everybody what they want in a very cool way. So for like Davies, he's got this concept with Sutekh, and it goes back, I guess, 50 years. He wants to tell this sequel, but then you get the new voice of Ncuti in there too. And in basically every one of his pre-show interviews, they're like, "Who's a monster you want to go up against?" And he goes, "The Beast. I love the Beast. Like I just really dug the Beast." And the big thing about the Beast is that's Gabriel Wolf. Like that's the same voice actor as Sutekh. So for Davies, it's like, oh hell yeah, I got to get Gabriel Wolf back in here for like more than one reason. And that's why I think you also get that beat with Carla of like, it's the Beast, because I think Davies is very consciously, unconsciously trying to connect those two characters together now, which is all kinds of interesting. Don't get me wrong, but I just really love the way of like down to Sutekh, down to Gabriel Wolf, down to Susan. He's like giving you the thing you want and something else. Like you're getting one more thing, which is cool, but good.
The connection to the Beast from Satan Pit Impossible Planet, like at the time, the Beast was sort of speculated, like how is it connected to Sutekh? Because obviously it had the same voice, and it's like another, this god is real sort of a concept. And now I feel like in retrospect, you could read it as Russell Davies doing Sutekh at a time when he didn't think probably he would ever be able to really do Sutekh, because like that would just be crazy, like some obscure reference from 50 years ago, like who would do that? But now that the show has been on for almost 20 years,
we're in era 3.
Yeah,
it's new Who.
I feel like he was like, fuck it, I can do it, I can get away with it. And he's right, but not in 2006.
But I think he can get away with it now because he's also giving we're here doing a deep dive, like like this show that we're doing even right now. Like we're talking about the layers that the writing is operating on, the layers of the mythology going back. But most of these episodes have just been so accessible on their own that it's pulling off that dual sort of like mandate of a good TV writer or a good show, is that in my small anecdotal pool of people who are new to the show, they're finding it very accessible. And I've had people come in and say, "Well, I can't start the show. I have to start from the very beginning." I'm like, "No, you don't. Because you're never going to. You're not, and you literally can't because those episodes don't exist. They were destroyed." And explain that to somebody is a whole process. But I said, well, at least start with the 2006 series or something like that. You don't have to start from the very beginning, or just start here. Just start here isn't even not a bad starting point. And the people who have are just finding it very accessible, very fun, and we get to go stupidly deep about it because Davies is getting to do that. And that's a really hard trick to pull off. But I think it's also the reward he gets for coming back and having matured as a writer rather than just relying on old tricks and saying, well, I'm gonna bring back the stuff I always wanted to do, but now I know how to do it. Um, I only moments before the episode we were filming this that I realized the voice actor for Sutekh was linked to the Beast. I was like, oh man, that's a lot because that was an intense episode. But yeah, I mean, this is just layering and layering. But you don't need to have the 60-year history of Who to enjoy this series. This episode with the reveal, yeah, I think that one little thing is missing, but I think we're going to get that payoff in the next episode. I think we're going to get the intensity of why Sutekh is so scary and why it's such a problem. Besides the fact that he's turning people to sand death, that's going to be a problem in itself. But I think there are a lot of mysteries because we still have no idea who is Ruby's mother. This episode is called "The Legend of Ruby Sunday," and we still don't know who her mother is. That's going to be the big reveal, and I mean, yes, I am hoping that's going to be a reveal that knocks me back. I'll be okay if it's just mildly cool. That'll also be fine. But I'm really hoping for something where I just go, where again, it's going to be, damn, I hope I watched this with somebody. I'm going to be texting you. And if you're telling me you haven't watched it yet, I'm going to lose my mind because that's what I want it to be. I want it to be that kind of reveal because come on, they've been building it up. You didn't get to see her face. Nobody could see the face. All the different people in the time window could not see her mother's face. So I think there's going to be something big with that, and it better not be, oh, come back for the next season to find out that one. I think they do have to do that one in the next finale. But what a fun series of things to do while giving us really the need to watch this finale and find out what it is.
With the whole Susan thing, because that is when I started watching the show. It was when Matt Smith started, and then I went back. And I attempted to start back in, the earliest one I could find of William Hartnell. And I am usually, like, totally gung-ho for really old stuff. I can handle a slower pace, that sort of thing. And I couldn't get through them. And I felt really bad. But I saw those early, some of the early ones. So I did have an idea of who some of the people were. But because they kept mentioning Susan throughout the season, and there was that, is she going to turn out to be somebody? Is it going to be a reveal or what? And then you also have the question, who's Ruby's mother? I don't think she would be Ruby's mother just because the age thing, but the whole regeneration, she could be. One thing I started wondering is when they were talking about how he didn't know who Susan's mother was yet, so he hasn't had the kids yet. I didn't know that, like, I just figured in the 60 years, we at least knew that. So then I started wondering, is Ruby Susan's mother? In which case, who's Ruby's mother? I don't know. I was just, like, I literally, because the answers were not the answers that a lot of people have been speculating, I was like, all right, what other straws can we grasp from? What weird connections would come out of left field? When it first started and like the first episodes for a little while, I was like, is she Rose and other world David Tennant's daughter that somehow wound up there? And which could also be, because then it would still be the Doctor's daughter's granddaughter. So I don't know. There's a lot of different possibilities.
It's going to be something simpler than we expect. I think when all is said and done, that tends to be how Davies does it. Is that he will give us a lot of stuff, but then when it comes down to it, it's sort of like, oh, all right, well, that's a much easier explanation for it. Right? There we go.
The This one's just for the old Who heads, but as long as there are no looms involved, I'm gonna be fine. Like, just...
I actually... I think
you don't want to. Don't...
I
the
think
loom thing,
I think I'm the only one on Earth who actually thinks the loom thing is kind of cool. But that's because...
I too enjoyed that era of Doctor Who. Okay, so... briefest possible explanation for the folks at home, I guess, is like back in the 90s era of Doctor Who, in the wilderness years when there was no TV show and everybody was obsessed with cloning, and like we had just sequenced the human genome, so that's I think where a lot of this comes from too, is that like the idea was that Time Lords don't give birth to kids, they loom them out of genetics. This ends up being like a thing in the Superman comics, by the way. Like Superman's birthing matrix is this. It's this. They're stealing from Superman, I think.
Oh,
anyway,
wow.
the big mystery of Doctor Who back in the 90s was the Doctor was actually a loomed reincarnation of an ancient Gallifreyan figure called the Other,
who was a
the
contemporary of
third
Rassilon and
inventor
Omega,
of time
right?
travel.
Right.
Yeah, so basically there's like the guy who invented time travel and the guy who was a dick about it, and then this other guy. And then the explanation back then was that Susan was the granddaughter of the Other, who the Doctor picked up later, and she recognized. And it's like, okay, let's throw all that out. Just put that in the TARDIS rubbish bin, and we can have this new, like, easier to explain thing than that. So I had to do a little diversion about looms because it looms heavily on Doctor Who.
I kind of like the concept of the looms for two reasons.
Yeah, I get it.
Because it sort of says something about how completely like ossified Time Lord society is, that they procreate or replicate through this like repository of genetic material, just sort of like remixing their society over and over again. And I also like, well, so here's how it ties in with the conversation. I agree with you, Michael. Susan didn't literally return, but we got the show to deal with and pay off some long-term questions. I don't think they really get any longer term. And Davies did it in an emotional and effective way. And the reason why the show has never done that before is because you start opening a can of worms. You know, as you noted, the reason that they wrote Susan off the show is because they realized that it didn't actually make that much sense, and it was like harming the Doctor's ability to adventure if he was always concerned about the safety of his granddaughter, and like she was never allowed to grow as a character for many reasons, one of which was the fact that she had to remain this like prepubescent peril monkey, and there was like nowhere for her to go. So once you acknowledge that the Doctor used to travel with his granddaughter, you have to deal with the fact that, well, why hasn't he returned like he says he will and never does? How does he have a granddaughter? But also, like, her whole departure, like, as used to be common, especially in the earliest years of Doctor Who, was they weren't very sentimental about the departure of the companions because the show didn't really work in that register. So, like, you then have to deal with, it's really lame and rushed and screwed up how she just left.
Well, I mean, the Doctor locks her out of the TARDIS and then, like, gives her a speech about how, time for you to settle down with this guy you just met. Click, gotta go. Like, it's the worst possible stuff. Like, we're really underselling how badly, like, in Classic Who, it was like, well, you found a boy. Get out. Get out of the ship. Like, so much of classic Doctor Who was like the companion or assistant would be like, oh, Doctor, I found this nice man who vaguely resembles the concept of you. And he's like, get the fuck out of my ship. Get out of here! Like, you're not allowed to be a sexual being in this ship. That is not permitted. Get out!
Right.
So, I mean, that's back to the founding, like, concept of Doctor Who is, like, the reason he's her granddaughter is so it's not creepy there's an old man with a young girl on the ship.
Right.
Like, it's all this, like, really basic first draft TV problem they solved. And it's sort of haunted them for 60 plus years now.
But you have to love that all of this discussion is based on decisions that were made by people who had no
Yes.
intention of this being discussed 60 years later, not even 6 days later. This was not something they ever imagined discussing. And
Yes.
it has become this woven mythology that we nerd out over, which says something about us as well. Just not sure what. But
We're
it's
normal.
fascinating because this is the Star Trek problem of serialized sci-fi television is what do you do when this previous writer did something for a motive that has nothing to do with what you want to do? And now Davies is just like, well, I'm gonna have some fun with it. I'm just gonna have fun. And that's literally what this is that this is sort of his joyride through it, being able to do it. I think, and it's mostly working too, which is the fun part. But I love how I have no idea I until that very moment I had no idea that's how his Susan, his granddaughter, was sent off the show. Because from what this episode showed is that it was complex. He didn't want to mess up her life. It's that. It's like yeah, but really what just happened was it was like get out of my ship. You found a man. You're done. Like that's
That
hilarious. That's
and
hilarious.
and the reworking of that into like I was worried my life of danger would follow her is it still retcons into the show very well. Even when you like think of like so previous guest of the show and friend of mine Riley Silverman very astutely brought this up in the Game of Rassilon group chat, which is just like now that we've got Susan kind of back, we now have to talk about how none of us talk about how she showed up in the Five Doctors. Like just like we all just kind of conveniently don't talk about that time she showed up 20 years later because it kind of sucks. Like that's the truth of it is like she just sort of runs around and breaks her ankle again. Like nothing really happens there.
Well, there's a lot of things about the Five Doctors that we don't talk about because
Yes.
it's like here's all the stuff that you love from Doctor Who, but when you start to think about it, it all sort of breaks down very, very quickly, which is exactly why Susan just breaks her ankle because, like, that's the pop memory of who Susan was. She's the one who broke her ankle. It's ticking all the boxes. Oh, we have to have a Dalek in there. We have to have Cybermen for some reason. We have to have the Master. We have to have everybody.
The Rastin Warrior robot.
Yes.
One of the absolutely lamest things in the Five Doctors that is also simultaneously one of the coolest things in Doctor Who. Like it again, going back like John and Adrienne, like back to like this 60 wacky year history of this show, you're just like, that's another thing that makes no sense and is stupid, but we love it. Like there's just no way around it. Like it's a guy in silver spandex jumping around and throwing spears, and we love it. Like we love it. It rules.
Well, that's a funny thing. Even though I haven't seen the majority, I've seen probably 6 episodes of Classic Who. Whenever something does come up, I get excited about it because I know, like, I always get excited for things that other people get excited for. I'm like, oh, I know this is going to make this person happy. And there's just a different vibe. Like, yeah, just every time somebody, like one of the old companions or something like that happens and like there's just a different vibe. So even though I don't necessarily know who they are until they explain it, it's this is a special moment. Josh, you asked earlier though about if John and I knew who Sutekh was, and that I didn't know until afterwards, checking to see if it was something from an earlier episode, because I was like, he seems really scared about what's happening, and I couldn't tell if it was because he recognized from a past experience or if it was just the culmination of all these gods that they've been encountering in the season. But yeah, like a couple hours later I knew it was somebody from previously.
Well, something that Michael and I were talking about briefly before we started recording that I have to imagine is what stuck in Russell Davies' mind for so many years and, made Sutekh a candidate to return was that one of the things about Sutekh and the Pyramids of Mars was he really scared the Doctor because the Doctor, for one of the few times, really appeared vulnerable and really had no idea how to get out of this one. Like, he really was powerless and vulnerable and scared in a way that the Doctor in the classic series, and especially Tom Baker's Doctor, never really was that often. So I think it makes sense for Nshudi's Doctor to kind of have that same sort of profound fear because he's remembering, the last time I went up against Sutekh, I should have lost. which dovetails nicely with what the Doctor said. And the Doctor was realizing about the Maestro in the Devil's Court. He was like, I have tricks, and I usually get lucky. But fighting something like this, where the laws of physics, the laws of the universe, do not apply, like, how do you fight that? That's a similar sort of response that I think the Tom Baker Doctor had when he faced Sutekh. Was sort of like, how do I fight this?
It's something that gets quoted in the Maestro episode that is right out of Pyramids of Mars, is the moment in Devil's Court where the Doctor takes Ruby to the quote-unquote present day, which is a thing that Classic Who had never really talked about. But there's a moment in Pyramids of Mars where Sarah Jane, the companion in that episode, is like, or in Serial rather, is like, let's just go back to the 1980s, causing a lot of timing problems. Don't worry about it. Let's just go back to the 80s or the 70s. Don't worry about it. And they go to the quote-unquote present day, and it's a blown-out nuclear disaster, which is like not a thing the show had ever done, which is like, if we don't get this right when we go back to where we just were, this is it. Everybody in your time is dead. Like, the show had never really done that kind of time hopping. And what I think is it's part of setting all this stuff back up is that Russell Davies like quoted that in Devil's Court with like, Maestro, like, they stole music, they can do all these incredible, impossible, godly things, and the Doctor is the strange thing is I'm thinking now of like the initial run of Neil Gaiman's Sandman, where the Sandman was still bound to these tools like the ruby and the bag of sand and like that sort of thing. Like, the Doctor is still bound to the TARDIS and the Sonic, like he still has tools and a conveyance, whereas the gods don't have, they just have a harbinger or whatever the hell Susan Triad is.
If to go to a completely different direction, because it just jumped into my mind about this, the Susan Triad thing as a herald. There is a herald already in unit, just like the kid was a herald.
Harbinger, the Harriet Harbinger,
which is why again I was like, wait a second, Susan Twist is not just a herald. It's implied that she's one of the gods, but it seems to just be doing that. That's where it's confusing. I think the reveal next week is going to be big. But what got me about that is you have, all right, so you have like the big scary thing, you have all that. What is the Doctor? Is it going to be the Doctor's job to save this, or is it going to be something a little bit different? Because this episode is about Ruby Sunday. I mean, it's titled about Ruby Sunday, and she has only a fairly modest role in this episode. I mean, she's there with her mother at different points, but she's not really like the central character except in the time window, which I thought was a brilliant plot device. Was okay, can't take the TARDIS back, but you have a time window, right? No, you're prohibited from developing that, but you have one, right? Yeah, it's on the 10th floor. Brilliant, because the Doctor, he's like, he knows. He's like your parent. He's like, listen, I know what you get up to. Don't try this. Where is it? Great. Cool mechanic, cool idea. The fact that they're using all the nuclear power of Europe, what had my mind going, like, so where are the power cables and how does that work? And Brexit happened, so are they really still part of Europe? I went down a rabbit hole in that one moment. I don't know why. And it's just like, okay, so they have this, and we still didn't get an answer about Ruby Sunday, so that's going to be a big thing. And what are the gods? And my last point where I was going with this, and then got completely derailed in my own head, was the whole tech thing and the revelation of the technology that was about to be free code for everybody. It was a weird thing that I felt that Susan Twist was a combination of like Elon Musk before he went completely crazy, or before he realized he was crazy, and the British Prime Minister who did the awkward walkout, which
she does the Theresa May dance. Yes, she's doing the exact dance.
And it was so deliberate. It was like, we're going to do the Theresa May dance, and she even knows she's doing it. She's like, oh, I'm doing this in front of a fake live audience. Was brilliant. But I want to talk about that whole like the tech billionaire thing, which is not a new thing for Davies, and it's not a new thing for Doctor Who or New Who. because I remember the Sontaran introduction was brilliant because it was all about like, yeah, the young tech billionaires at that point. That would have been what, like 2009
8.
ish,
Yeah.
2008.
Yeah, that was social network
That's
style. Yeah.
yeah, that was before even like Musk was the big guy on the scene. This is when many other tech billionaires post.com boom were there, and Davies and the writers there are highly critical of the masters of the universe type tech billionaires that now we're saying, oh God, we're dealing with that in overdrive today with AI. And just so people know, like it was just announced today that like Sam Altman's like, oh hey, maybe we are going to become for profit and everything else. Like every single billionaire you encounter, or potential billionaire in his case, um, has that same problem. And Davies is like, yeah, but in this case, they actually might be the herald of the god of who's going to destroy all of creation. So there we go. And I like how he was just sort of putting it out there, but that there's been a through line that of skepticism about somebody like that. That yeah, they may have the best of intentions, but in fact they are going to spread something that is going to have all these horrific unintended consequences that's going to bring us down and it's going to destroy our society. So, and we don't have the convenience in our actual world of having the doctor to come in and be like, yeah, we'll take care of that. Like, well, I'll undo that bad code that weaved its way through your entire civilization and is now going to destroy you. It's like, we're not trying, I mean, I hope, maybe we do have the doctor out there, we just don't know it, but, maybe that's the only reason we've actually survived this long.
No, it was funny too because this episode, I think, literally called out Elon Musk at one point when they were in unit. Somebody said, I'm reading the transcript right here. Evil genius with secret alien software. It was top of our list. God knows we've stopped enough of them. Well, except the obvious. We'll get him.
We'll get him. That's who that was. Okay. Everybody I know is trying to figure out like who is the Doctor Who person they're referencing, and you're right.
I think it's
just
Elon
doing
Musk.
Elon Musk thing.
Oh my God.
Holy hell! You're so right. Wow. Oh, that's so good.
Okay. Okay.
Oh wow.
Which I
Wow.
think is really kind of incredible if you step back a second. In 2017, Star Trek Discovery was name dropping Elon Musk.
He's in there with Zephram Cochrane and the Wright brothers. Yeah.
6-7 years later, he's an evil villain on Doctor Who who's by proxy responsible for unleashing an angry god on the planet.
But that's why I like that Davies has always been skeptical like that, because in 2017, and I have heard, the background rumors that a lot of that was almost his PR machine almost purchased his way into Star Trek to get that sort of name drop, or that there was something that had to do with that PR machine. And that was the genius for him was really a PR machine, running companies, reasonably well and getting some new tech out there, but it was a giant PR thing. And that's what that's oftentimes what these villains in Doctor Who are, is that they have a platform. They sell themselves. I mean, how many times has the Master done that? And then does it in different incarnations, decides, well, this time I'm going to be a prime minister. It's always about finding a platform, reaching out to people and convincing them how awesome you are so they will follow you off the cliff. And that's what we see with almost every tech billionaires. That they're just like, yep, follow me. I have your best interests at heart. This will be great. And then we go off the cliff. They just end up with lots of money and make us poor, which is usually the scenario. And that's what I love the idea behind, like, okay, well, we all have heroes. We all have a hero, and the hero of this show is the Doctor. And they play into that because the Doctor has to always step back at different points and deal with their own thing, or has to, or is not going to be there to save us every single time. Because the moment we look at somebody as a Superman, they'll become our ruler in one way or another. And that's sort of what the Master, to me, always sort of manifested, because that was sort of the Master was getting at. And hence the name Master. It wasn't just like Master of Time, it was Master of other living beings. And the Doctor steps back. The Doctor rescues people, but then the Doctor has the power to correct so many of humanity's ills in the short term, but would effectively have to rule us to do so. So the Doctor steps back and watches us screw up time after time after time, is horribly disappointed. We get lectured by Peter Capaldi's Doctor in the most profound ways. And then we continue screwing up, creating empires in space and still screwing up, and the Doctor rescues us but doesn't live our lives for us. And the villains oftentimes manifest that other flip side, which is that, oh, I'm going to solve all humanity's problems. And even if they come from a good place or initially, and then they end up ruling humanity or trying to rule humanity, and that's how you become a villain. So I like how that's maintained really consistent throughout the series. Is that the Doctor is not there to solve all our problems. The Doctor saves us from scaring ancient gods every once in a while, but can't necessarily save us from ourselves.
I think you're right on the money with that, though I do have a cynical response, um, but I much prefer your interpretation, and uh, I think a part of it is that the Doctor, he says like I don't get involved, but then he sees something he doesn't like, and like he gets involved, so he can put a
It's
stop to
very
it.
involved. Yeah.
He gets very involved. He will bring down governments, entire civilizations, if they look at him the wrong way, and then he leaves. He doesn't stay around to clean up the mess because
Right.
he doesn't. That's not his style. He's like, okay, my work here is done, and you guys go figure this out, and I'm gonna go keep on having adventures. I do think though that both things can be true.
Well, yeah, because the Doctor is not meant to be perfect. It
Right.
has to be the perfect story mechanism for us to watch the show, obviously, to keep it going. But from I think that the really especially in New Who, the way that they've tried to examine the Doctor as a being, you have this flawed person who will rage, will grieve, and mess things up on their own. But usually, every once in a while, and I love it when Tennant's Doctor does that, it's just like, no, I'm going to fix everything. I'm literally going to, and I'm going to do whatever I want, and I can influence all of it. Tries and is humbled by it, and has to learn it. And it feels like almost every Doctor has to learn that at some point, that they can't fix everything, and that when they try, they will mess everything up even more. And that's sort of been the cycle of the Doctor. And I wonder if we're going to see Intruder's Doctor sort of do the same thing of like, oh no, I'm gonna fix it all. I'm gonna reset everything. I'm gonna make it all work, and then have to be taught, yeah, that's not going to work. And that's that fine line between why where he could become a villain.
Mm.
And yeah, the shows need to have him go to new adventures every week. So obviously, you just got to look at it like, yeah, we're going deep on it, but at the end of the day, it's a serial show. The Doctor has to be able to move on. It cannot just be the show about the Doctor fixing all of humanity's ills every single time. That's why I love Torchwood when Doctor's not there. The absence of the Doctor is so profound, because that's when you're told, it's like, yeah, that when we really go dark, the Doctor won't save us from ourselves, and uh, that's I think that's the key. The key difference is the Doctor will save us usually from a villain or an individual human or an organization, but
But
won't
not from
save,
ourselves.
yeah, the
Mm.
core of our being. He's like, no, you got to do that. You got to do that yourself.
That's the thing that I feel like I like that it feels like Davies has picked up from the post Torchwood eras of Who, in like the Moffat era and even the Chibnall era, of the Doctor is a force that improves the people they meet as well. As you were talking, John, I was thinking about the John Hurt quote from Day of the Doctor. I'm going to paraphrase it badly, of like, that great people are forged in fire. It's the privilege of lesser people to light the flame. And the idea of like the Doctor has always kind of been the person carrying the torch, not necessarily the like, and like the Doctor makes these companions into their own adventurers and their own people. And the thing I've been trying to sneak into talking about this whole ep and keep forgetting about is there's just this amazing moment between Ruby and Carla, where Ruby, like, after a whole season of being terrified of these abandonment issues and having them actualized against her over and over and over again, and being terrified of being alone, she has the strength, because of the adventures with the Doctor and because of her own internal strength having been catalyzed by the Doctor, to say to her mother, like, if you're not going to help, leave. Like, if you're not going to help us out here, go home. I got this. And that is like the Ruby of Ruby Road and the Ruby of Legend of Ruby Sunday are two different people. Like the way that Doctor has catalyzed her into becoming her own sort of hero is like, I think that's another great success of the new era of Davies is, I think he's even looking back at that himself and being like, for me personally, like when I initially watched Torchwood, loved it, had a great time. The more I think about Torchwood, the more I hate it, because it just like doesn't get the message of Doctor Who. Like it just like the whole message of Torchwood is that we're like grubby, shitty fucking monsters, and it's just like, yeah, sure, but like we've got a heart of gold, Dick. Like, come on, we're not all sex gas and cannibals in the fucking woods. Like,
Well, but that's why I find Russell T Davies such a compelling writer, and that's why I think Doctor Who is such a perfect vehicle for him, because he thinks that. He thinks humanity is really, really awful. But he also knows from experience that humanity has a capacity for great beauty and kindness and wonderful, wonderful things. And it's that contradiction, the tension between those two things, is what makes Russell T Davies' writing so interesting. And Doctor Who is great because you can go to those places, but you can't stay there.
Well, to jump in now, I want to talk just briefly, and this is where I would love, when in another episode to delve into Davies, but as part of the, because there's part of the queer aspect of Doctor Who. But when he wrote and produced "It's a Sin,"
Mm-hmm.
which is about the group of friends 1980s living through the HIV, the AIDS plague, the horrors of it. So as a gay man, he saw and lived through and lost people um, in a way that people just older than me really, really experienced, which was humanity abandoning them completely, condemning them, and and almost celebrating, and in many cases actually celebrating the horrific deaths of largely gay men. And that shapes your humanity. And you watch something like It's a Sin, you see that transition of like celebrating humanity to its absolute depths, and horrors to some element of restoration, but through grief and all of that. And I think, yeah, there is that. Torchwood plays a role in that because it shows humanity again having that moment where it turns its back, and then participates in the worst atrocities, participates in just, even if it's just standing by, saying, "Yep, we're going to let this happen. We're going to let this happen. These people deserve it." That happens, and I think that shaped Davies personally. I can't see how it wouldn't have. Um, and that sort of writing. So you always get these dual aspects of humanity that we're really shitty, we're really awful, where we do these horrible things, and then we do these beautiful, amazing things. And I think that's why when you're writing, and then you're going to put that into a character like the Doctor, it's that same duality of like, oh yeah, I want to save these people. Oh man, these people are so awful. And how do you put that on screen repeatedly to an audience, without giving them complete whiplash? And I think that was what Torchwood did successfully, was it showed us that darker aspect, and then uses Doctor Who a year later in that scene where Tennant's Doctor is regenerating, is about to regenerate, and basically approaches Captain Jack, to partially absolve him, you know, of what happened in Children of Earth, in Torchwood. And that was a beautiful scene to me, and profound, because it was, again, it was that whole cycle of humanity of, yeah, you went really low and really bad, and you experienced that, you watched that happen. Um, and but you still deserve life. You still deserve happiness. You still deserve companionship and love. That was the message, and that struck me so profoundly. And I still, this is a lighter season. It has its depth, but it's definitely more accessible and bright. But that through line is still there, and I think we're going to see some of that coming through. I mean, I think that was what 73 yards did for me in this season. Was it gave us that darkness, because I wanted to jump back, because we're talking about the performance of Kate Lethbridge.
Mm.
Brilliant in every episode. That was a scene that got me, was her switching from getting the message in the earpiece, disengage, and going back, and another moment of complete and total abandonment.
Mm.
Um, and Ruby lives, and lives to old age, and says in a peaceful way, "Everybody abandoned me." except for her, whoever that mysterious figure is. Again, that just, yeah, that gets me. I'm like, yeah, what do we deserve, like, writing on this level, even if not everything's perfect, where these little moments that were so great, showing us the darkness, and then followed up by somebody coming to peace with stuff. I don't think this finale is going to be quite. I think the finale is going to be more bombastic than that. We've had a lot of our emotional beats, but we could be surprised. We could be surprised, and who knows?
I don't know. I think it's going to have its share of emotional beats. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I assume Ruby is going to find out who her mother is, and I'm sure there will be some sort of emotional thing there. But yeah, I mean, it's a Russell T Davies Doctor Who finale, so it's definitely going to be bombastic. Um, just a couple things before I want to start wrapping up here. Russell T Davies, I think 5 days ago, he put out a list of previous Doctor Who episodes to watch before you watch The Legend of Ruby Sunday, and
Oh wow!
I thought his list was interesting and in retrospect quite cheeky, because obviously the one episode that's not on this list that is probably the best episode to watch before is Pyramids of Mars. But if you said watch Pyramids of Mars, then you would know. Oh, Sutech's probably coming back. But on his list was The Parting of the Ways, the season 1 finale,
Hmm.
uh, The Bells of St. John,
Ooh.
Spearhead from Space, the first third Doctor serial, which I don't quite understand, and that was actually what my question was about.
Units in it? I
Yes,
guess?
right,
Like,
I guess.
What the fuck?
I guess
What?
units. Yeah, I mean that's the only thing I can think of.
Units there?
A Good Man Goes to War.
Ooh. These are weird picks.
I know, and The Church on Ruby Road.
Well, I mean, okay. That would make sense.
Yeah, the one that really baffled me was Spearhead from Space, because some people were dropping some hints that there was a third Doctor connection to the finale, which excited me because that's an era of the show that New Who doesn't really engage with that much, because it's sort of anomalous. It's when, Doctor Who tried to become like the man from U.N.C.L.E. or something. It was like sort of like a spy-fi sort of a thing. And Michael, I know you and I have talked about this in the past, but my opinion of the third Doctor and the Unit era has risen since we last spoke about it. There's something comforting about it that I like. I think it's like the regular cast of characters, and there are some bangers in there.
The sound design's just so bad. Like, so many John Pertwee serials just end with one alarm screaming for 5 full minutes at top volume. And it's like, no, you could just turn that off. What are we doing? Like, I want to give, but it's physically painful to watch sometimes for me. Just because of the sound design.
My main problem with the third Doctor, it's the closest they get to really undermining the character, because
the entire concept of the character, yes.
Because
as soon as John Pertwee goes, I know that guy from the club. I've seen him at the same country club. You're like, this is not Doctor Who. This is some rich asshole.
Yeah, it's the closest they come to making the Doctor a part of the establishment. They make him an establishment figure, which is why I was intrigued he would invoke Spearhead from Space, because similarly to how he reintroduced Susan and how problematic that was with like the whole concept of the show as we understand it now, I was also like, I wonder if he's going to somehow reconcile the like patrician establishment figure that the Doctor was in the 70s. But I guess I was overthinking it. But
there's one line about the great enigma, and that's all we get.
Right. The great enigma. Yeah. No, I like that. But that said, yeah, the big thing obviously missing from that list is Pyramids of Mars, because I think that would be probably a pretty good episode to watch.
Kind of a biggie.
Yeah, it's kind of the biggie. For anyone who may be tempted to go back and watch Pyramids of Mars ahead of the finale, if they're curious, there are 2 suggestions I have to try to engage with the classic series and actually enjoying it. First, usually when a classic story is shown on TV or, used to be sold on DVD, it would be shown as like one long feature-length movie where they combine 25-minute episodes into like a 2 or 2.5 hour feature-length show. And that's a bad way to watch the classic show, because the classic show was meant to be watched 25 minutes at a time with some time in between. when you cram all the episodes together and watch them all the way through, the pacing just feels insane. And there's a reason. It's not meant to be watched like that. Like, it was meant to be watched in these, like, little discrete chunks with a week in between. And they sometimes remind you about things that happened last week because maybe the person watching didn't see last week, or maybe they don't remember last week. So I would suggest watching it 1.5 hour episode at a time. And the other thing is some context to keep in mind. Like, one of the key differences between the way British television developed and American TV developed was American TV was sort of working more in like the Hollywood cinema tradition, you know, using the same cinematic language and making like cheap and fast mini movies every week. In the UK, TV was more or less coming from a theatrical tradition. So if you think about it as like this is televised theater, I think all of a sudden it starts making a lot more sense why it is the way that it is and the choices that they're making. And then like viewed that way, like imagine you were doing a stage production and all of a sudden you had access to like a chroma key and you could make all these wacky effects happen. You could like change the background. That would be a game changer. It's like, wow, the possibilities of that. And John, you said something earlier about how you have to change your mindset in terms of how to take in the effects and stuff. The thing about Doctor Who is that if you remember that it's actually coming from like a theatrical tradition, then all of a sudden you realize like, oh, like realism isn't the goal here. It's trying to communicate or represent this idea visually. You know, if you're used to watching Hollywood movies where realism is the goal, you watch some old Doctor Who and you see the special effects and you're like, what were they thinking? How could anyone possibly see this and take it seriously? And the reason is because they weren't necessarily expecting realism. And I think the creators of the show were like, with this new tool, there's more possibilities for the kinds of ideas we can represent on screen. Not necessarily realistically, but it's sort of like it allows for a story to happen.
A lot of it was approached very much like a play, which is you're going to be limited on your set. You're going to have a set that is less dynamic, not as focused on special effects. Some things to give you, a certain impression, but then it's the audience's position to then imagine the rest and take it from there. So thinking about it from there, that would help me get back into the older episodes and sort of shift and help do that like context shift. And dealing with that, there is a legal way to get Pyramid of Mars. And without disclosing the specific location, Josh, our hometown library has the DVDs.
Oh, fantastic.
My God.
Cool.
So, and there are numerous libraries, as it turns out. So, to all viewers, your public library is an amazing resource for all kinds of things, including classic episodes of Doctor Who. So, I fully suggest people take advantage of their local libraries, support your local libraries. I will die on that hill. But in many cases, they are the last place we have. They're the ones keeping DVDs and Blu-rays for the ones that upgraded to that. And there was so much released on DVD for that period of '97 through even now that was not in any other format. So, get those DVDs, watch them, and keep your libraries going because they're the archive at this point.
I'll just say I work in home entertainment, and I am astonished every day by the lasting power of DVD versus everything else. So many people just like never went past that one. So DVD's pretty much, it's an invaluable resource, definitely.
But I will tell you, I'm going to be driving back, getting that DVD so I can watch it before this week's finale.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and if you can, I do suggest you space out the other parts. Is that a 4-part serial? Do you happen to know off the top of your head, Michael?
No. I've been trying to figure out basically this entire recording off the top of my head if it's a 4 or a 6. I want it to be a 4, because if it's a 6, it's got to be bad.
I don't think Tom Baker did 6.
I don't think he did a lot of 6s.
except for Invasion of Time, but that was like a production.
When wasn't it?
Well, yeah.
I was gonna say earlier, like I feel like the story of Doctor Who is so much of the production story of Doctor Who is like one friend of the producer is like, hey, here's this gadget I found. Like so much of the production history is like, we found this yellow screen, not a green screen, not a blue screen, a yellow screen is how they were doing it. Like, there's so much of that stuff. Like the paint box, the guy was like, I figured out the settings on this software called the paint box. And then all the way down to another random story before we close, but I'm in tangent mode. Like the guy who invented the robot companion Chameleon and then died, so they had no idea how to operate the robot companion Chameleon and had to like deal with that for a year or two and then just killed them off.
Oh, JNT on the list of
JNT
on the list of questionable production and creative decisions that John Nathan Turner was responsible for. Where do you think let's make a companion an actual robot that surely won't have any problems?
I will say the one smart thing he had on that is that the robot's name was Chameleon and it could turn into other actors. That was very smart. They really thought that part through. That's the thing that saved them.
That idea came from the writer who was like, there's no way that this robot is going to work. I'm going to write them an out.
What a king.
What's also crazy to me is that they wrote the character out instead of just making the robot transform into something.
Change into another guy. Like, yeah, you could have Chameleon could still be on the show. But yeah, we could talk about, this is not Chameleon.
That's one of the things I love about old movies and TV shows, though, is like they had to be so creative with their writing based on their limitations. So if they find things and it's like, this is cool, let's do something with this. But if it didn't work or they could only do so much with it, then they had to figure out, you know, and whether it's something in a sci-fi series with, you know, technology or effects or something, or, you know, just a regular drama when you had, you know, censorship things and the way they'd get around saying, you know, it's just, you need to figure out what's being said. It doesn't have to just be said flat out. I just enjoy that with older things in general. Sometimes I'm like, really? You know, watching something now, I'll be like, you really needed to say that? They could have been way more creative in the way you did that, but everything's just like, wah, now.
No, totally. And that's actually to bring it back to something that John said earlier about how, you know, whoever wrote this idea couldn't have imagined that it would be discussed 60 years later. That's one of the reasons why I genuinely love Doctor Who so much, is because there wasn't a, you know, single mastermind behind the show. It was a lot of serendipity, a lot of different creative voices, a lot of things that were, you know, established, and they ran with some of them. They forgot conveniently certain other ones that didn't really work. And over time, this entity emerged, this conglomeration of all of these different ideas emerged to something that's as coherent. Like, it's amazing the cosmology of Doctor Who has the coherence that it does have, given the myriad of different creative voices and production teams, different lead actors. But as Dr. Elizabeth Sandifer says, she calls Doctor Who a quasi-sentient metafiction authored by an anarchic spirit within British culture. And I think that's as good a definition or explanation of Doctor Who as any. It's kind of alive. It's its own thing. It shouldn't exist.
I will say though, like we it is this thing that exists as this like cultural phenomenon within British culture, but 2 times now it's been Russell Davies with like his hands on the defibrillator paddles going, no, we're not rebooting it. Ka-thunk. Like, all that continuity stays. Ka-thunk. Wake up, fucker. Ka-thunk. You're still 16 different people. Like, deal with it. Like, Twice he said the option to start from scratch and change what the TARDIS is or do whatever the hell. But he's like, no, it's a police box. It's this thing that was common in 1963 that now has to be explained. Like, that is part of the charm. That it goes back to, like, I think of that quote from Ian, the late William Russell, of like, who would have thought a mild curiosity in a junkyard would have turned out to be, all of this. And it like you said, Josh, like, it just really is like, I can't believe this thing that started there is all the way here. And in this week's episode, we're talking about stuff from 1963. Like, it's all still relevant. Like, it's all still one enchilada, which is a very un-British food. It's one doner kebab. Yep.
No, yeah, that's why I love the idea that Doctor Who is a quasi-sentient metafiction that just kind of exists because, of course, it exists, and it
must
exist. Wow, we got on some weird tangents there. Any final thoughts or musings before next week?
Yeah, I mean, my final thought is just now I'm ready for it. I mean, and yes, it is part 2. For the viewers that were very upset that this turned out to be a 2-parter, I think it was specifically told that it was going to be a 2-parter. So yes, this is a 2-part finale. And
that's how these things work.
Yeah, so I'm just glad this isn't Best of Both Worlds. We don't have to wait a season, for a season break. Like, we're going to get it this week.
Well, you actually don't know how next week's going to end.
Oh, don't say that! Don't say that! Don't say that!
You just threw salt over your shoulder at the edge of creation, John.
No,
you made it happen.
It's both my fault.
Next week continued at Christmas.
If we are left with a complete cliffhanger until Christmas, it's my fault.
It's your fault.
Yep.
So thanks for that. Next week we will be back with the season finale. I can't believe season finale already. I do have some ideas. I have some plans in mind for how to continue this illustrious podcast in between seasons. I'm sure everyone is freaking out about no more TARDIS Rubbish, but
Tales of the TARDIS Rubbish, yeah. So until next week, we are TARDIS Rubbish on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And please always remember to run fast, love hard, be kind.